Kia ora. Welcome to Conversations with Wahine, brought to you by the Wellington branch of the National Council of Women, New Zealand.
Hello and welcome to Conversations with Wahine. Today you're joined by Harita and I've got Ash with me over Zoom. How are you going?
It's almost Friday, so I'm in a great mood.
It is, but the weather's turned a bit crappy again. It's meant to be spring, but I don't really know. But this is Wellington, so it is what it is. Today we're doing our interview over Zoom because our guest doesn't actually live in Wellington, and it's a guest that we've actually interviewed previously. You might remember or you might have heard our interview with Anke Richter. She is an international journalist from Germany who lives in Littleton, and she is the author of the 2022 HarperCollins bestseller book Cult Trip. Now she's also the founder and organizer of DeCult, the first cult awareness conference in Australasia that's happening in Christchurch in October. Welcome, Anke. How are you?
Oh, thank you. Welcome. Kia ora, koutou, both of you. Great to see you again.
Yeah, you too. It's been a while since we last spoke, so it's really cool to see what you've been up to. Last time we interviewed you in the lead up to your book launch, and so we thought it would be timely to interview you in the lead up to organising, like you said, Australasia's first ever cult awareness and DeCult conference. Yeah, it's quite unbelievable that it's actually taken until now for someone to organise one, actually.
And I actually had no idea back then when we first met that this was going to happen. It's happened so fast. 2 years ago when the book came out, I had no idea this is what I would be doing now, a year from then, 2 years from then. But here we are. Yeah. So
I feel like it's come full circle. We were there for the book and now we're there for the conference. What's going to be the next thing?
Oh, right. I think next thing will be a big break, to be honest.
Holiday, I'll be there for that too.
Yeah, maybe put me in an induced coma for a few weeks. I think that would be good. Just so, I don't do anything. And I get quite intense, to be honest. So to have something like this on the heels of a book launch and book festivals and international events, and then, what was I thinking organizing this massive, thing? But it's happening and it's all coming together and it's super exciting, but it's also exhausting. Yeah, I have to be honest.
Yeah. I can imagine. But obviously, you're organizing this conference because, I'm assuming very much because the book was a huge success. If the book wasn't a success, then there wouldn't, be that market for people to come to this conference. So can you tell us about the success of the book now that it's been distributed globally and how it's been received in New Zealand and also in other countries?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. So, but first of all, I don't think the conference is happening because of the book itself being a success, but more what I've learned from it since it's come out and how I identified that there's a need for something like this because of the people who've contacted me afterwards and who needed help. But I can come to that later. But it's nice to actually talk about the book again because it feels like it's so on the back burner these days for me. But it's actually been amazing. So it came out in Aotearoa, New Zealand first. Then it was launched as a paperback in the UK. I actually went to Koh Phangan in Thailand and did an event there, which is the scene of the crime of a big part of my book, where the Agama drama, that's what I call it, Agama yoga sexual abuse scandal took place. And I actually went to not that yoga school, but to a place nearby and held a workshop called How Not to Start a Cult. And I actually gave this workshop in a few other places, some festivals, and just now at the Word Festival in Christchurch in August. And I went to, I don't know how many literature festivals, book festivals in New Zealand where I was a speaker. Tauranga, Auckland, Nelson was the first one. That was exciting. And Byron Writers Festival in Australia. And the book's also come out in the US. But I think it's more like a quiet launch. I just don't have the the means, the publicity, the money to launch a big campaign. So I hope that word of mouth in the right circles gets it out there. And also having been on some, probably the major podcasts already, they've interviewed me, and that's been really validating, because I have to say I was really nervous before the book came out, because mine is a bit of an outlier. It's not a memoir of someone who suffered in a cult or who survived a cult or who grew up in one and left. We see plenty of those amazing books now, but that's not my book. I'm just the journalist who's come to close and talked to a lot of people, and then I also shared my own experience of what this did to me. And I'm not a cult expert, so I was thinking, oh, maybe the cult survivors are not going to like this, because who am I putting myself into this book as well and into the story? And the cult experts are just going to rubbish me because I'm not an expert. I'm just a journalist. I didn't study this. I'm not an academic, but it's been really amazing and validating and quite moving for me to see the response I've had. I was a speaker at the International Cultic Studies Association conference in Barcelona this year. The first time I went there a few years ago, I was just an observer and wrote a piece for RNZ about it and was just curious. And now I was there as a speaker. So I've come a long way with the book, and it's pretty amazing being in a network of international people who are all tackling this problem. And I think I'm part of that.
I mean, I think, though, we talked about this the last time we interviewed you. I think the fact that you aren't a survivor of a cult lended a really interesting perspective. So I just think that adds to it. And I really hope that we see it get picked up internationally, because it's such a fantastic book. And, the fact that it's been so well received here just speaks volumes. I'm really interested to talk more about the conference, because you alluded to it there, that there was a real need for it. So could you tell us a little bit about what that need is that you identified here in New Zealand, who's going to be speaking at the conference, kind of what you're hoping to achieve by hosting it?
Yeah. So when I was still interviewing people for my book, especially the ones who've left Centrepoint 20 odd years ago, former kids struggling, not comfortable to see a therapist, because at the time at Centrepoint, at this therapy and sex cult in up in Albany, they were, they had therapy shoved down their throats. They hated the jargon. They often didn't trust therapists because they've been harmed by them. A lot of the abusers at Centrepoint were therapists. So that was a huge hurdle. I was aware of that, just to suggest to them, well, just get some therapy for the trauma that you're still carrying. It's not that easy. It's not that easy for anybody, but especially not easy if there are no trained people for this specific sort of flavor of trauma, or the complexity of this trauma, if there are none in New Zealand. And then also with Leavers from Gloriabel, I've heard the same, that they often found that the counseling was almost a bit gross, because the person on the other side was uninformed, was almost voyeuristic, just wanted to hear more about Gloriabel, was fascinated by the cult, which is not the right approach if you try and help someone unpack coercive control and what they've been through. So that became really clear to me already in my research, that we're lacking those services here in New Zealand. We don't have a government-funded cult watch agency or anti-cult agency, or one that informs people and helps people like other Western countries have them. And then when the book came out, when Cult Trip came out, there were quite a few people who messaged me, who emailed me, sometimes like 2 or 3 a week in these first weeks and months. And they'd come out of small, obscure, or at least for me, they were obscure at the time, evangelical groups, mostly in New Zealand and Australia, but mostly in New Zealand. And they thought that this was reflecting their own experience, even though it was a different cult, because the dynamics are the same, the trauma is the same, the loss of family, the loss of self, the being lost in the world outside, not knowing who, how to even explain where you grew up and what that did to you, why you're not normal in that sense. So they asked me for help, and some of them asked me if I would know of a therapist. I became a bit of a to-go-to person. Of course, I'm not really equipped and qualified to even give advice, and I couldn't send them anywhere. So the need became really clear. And then this idea popped up. I love events, I love festivals, I love conferences, I love book festivals. I thought, well, how about we have something that's not an academic conference, even though there are academics coming and speaking, but something that's also for the wider public, but also for professionals who need to upskill. And how about we bring cult survivors there, we bring experts there. There's so many fantastic people around the world who I'm aware of. I've been on their, I've done interviews with them. I know them from these networks. I thought, what if New Zealanders who are all asking, what can we do about Gloriabell? What if they had access to more of this content and of these speakers and these insights? And especially if they would hear from cult survivors in person. So we've created this 2-day event with 30-something speakers, 22 sessions. We'll have a survivor story jam with performance and music. We'll have a panel on Gloriabell, we have a panel on Jehovah's Witness, we have a panel on disinformation and radicalization online. We'll have a panel on homophobia and rainbow rights in cultic groups. We have a panel, oh my God, so much, cult media, which is of course my topic close to my heart, and kids and cults. So yeah, gosh, I could go on, but
it sounds just so, I mean, it's so holistic, the conference. It's covering all of those periphery topics that, you know, disinformation, radicalization online, that all just feed into that wider cult sphere, I suppose. And you actually answered one of my other questions, which was going to be, is it more targeted towards law enforcement, government, legislation, or the public? But it sounds like it's a real mix, open bag for everyone.
Yeah, it is, but that's also that's the beauty, but also the challenge of it. But it's not like let's say like your ordinary dentist conference where you have dentists coming and maybe some people from pharmaceutical companies, right? But you wouldn't necessarily have patients coming to the dentist conference. Now, this is quite different, where this is specifically for people who have been in cults in their whānau and friends and people who want to understand this, but also for anybody who is actually interested in the topic and has watched all the Netflix docos and just wants to really upskill in this topic, yeah. And they're not there, hopefully, just to get, to get some trauma porn. That's we're very careful how we're holding this whole space, and there are mental health workers on standby also to help people who might be overwhelmed or might have reactions. But we're specifically inviting the professionals. So it is really a bit of a mix. So specifically doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals, health workers, because we'll have I'm really excited about this actually. We have one session which will be run by Caroline Ansley, who is a commune child from Centrepoint. And only sort of came out of the woodwork because of my initial research a few years ago, then started the Centrepoint Restoration Project, wrote and launched an open letter with others and to the former adults from Centrepoint, and appeared in a documentary on TVNZ. And now she's working for Health Pathways for Te Whatu Ora to actually develop basically cult education or pathways for cult leavers and people in cults so they can get the right medical care, because it is actually quite a specific topic. So I'm really announcing that, plugging that, pushing that, saying, people who work in healthcare, you got to get some of this into your system, into your brains, into your understanding. Please come. It's going to be interesting. There's a session just specifically for you, run by Christchurch GP, and everything's recorded also, so people who can't attend, but they can buy an online ticket and they can watch it later. So ideally would have police there too, and Oranga Tamariki, and Minister for Justice and Minister for Mental Health and the Children's Minister. We want them all there. But I'm also aware that for some government agencies, it could be conflicting, that they think they need to be super neutral on this topic or so. But I'm also questioning it, thinking, well, how neutral can you be on sexual abuse, on harm, on mental health problems, right? On coercive control? Isn't there a common denominator that this needs to stop, and that we can all upskill and do better and build these networks? So this is really what it's about, to actually build networks so that after DeCult, there will be better, maybe there will be a bit of like a pathway as well, like a more public pathway to have these conversations with more events, I mean, we have lots of ideas of what's to come after the conference too. Yeah.
That's amazing. And just like you said, most other conferences, it's just pigeonholed to one profession or, one group of people. Whereas with this, I feel like people are going to be able to share so much knowledge. You might have people that have left cults that are in the same group or sitting next to medical professionals or counselors, and you share knowledge about similar topics but from very different perspectives, which is going to help everyone involved, right? Like you were saying, people who leave a cult don't always know where to go for help or to get their life started after they leave the cult. And then counselors and medical professionals might not always know the best way to help those people. And so they're kind of sharing knowledge outside of their professional realm and outside of their job.
Yeah, I'd like to say a few more things about the counseling aspect, because this is not a survivor workshop. So this will be happening as well, actually, with two of our keynote speakers, our top speakers. One is Janja Lalich from the US, amazing expert who's written a few groundbreaking books, but one is Take Back Your Life, which has really helped probably many, many people who've come out of abusive groups. She's been a witness expert in court. She's worked with the FBI and so on against radicalization. And so she's coming over from California, first visit in New Zealand. And then she's also going to Timaru to spend some time with Gloria Leavers there and give a talk there. And the same with Julie Jenkinson, who is a psychotherapist from the UK, specialized in cult recovery therapy. And she has a whole model. It's called Walking Free. Walking Free from Abuse, Trauma. It's quite a long title, but I just call it Walking Free because this is how the title starts. And she will be offering, after the conference, she's offering 2 days of professional development, basically, for therapists and counselors, and then another session later on in November. So I think this is really the sort of the breakthrough moment of this conference of DeCult, or what we're actually doing here as a volunteer team, is actually that we're introducing cult recovery therapy in New Zealand for the first time. After all this time, after decades and decades of major cult disasters that have happened here, like Centrepoint and now Gloriaval, and I think that's really a great start, that there's a tangible solution. I mean, it's not going to fix everything overnight, but at least people know that that from very soon, hopefully from the end of this year or so, there will be some better informed counselors. I think 70 or more have already signed up for these trainings, and that's actually pretty amazing that we actually know, okay, here are people who are specialized in this. Because look, if you are suffering from sexual abuse trauma, you know where to go. You know, there is START. There is an organization that is in New Zealand, a mental health organization that's specialized on that. If you've fallen into addiction, or you have substance abuse problems, you can find specialized counselors and therapists in New Zealand, but not for cult therapy. And it is really a specialized field and needs to be recognized. So that's what's happening. And I'm super proud of that, actually.
That's really cool. So I don't know if you've thought this far ahead, but do you think this will be a once-off conference or something that you hope to do maybe every few years?
No, I think it'd be too much work if it was for once off, because we started a charity, we got so much going. It's been a year-long effort to get this off the ground, and so it would almost be a bit wasted, everything we have. And plus we've been inundated with amazing speaker requests, and I had to actually tell a few people, look, we can't fit you in anymore, but let's do it next time. So I think it could be more like maybe a 2-yearly conference, as an international one, maybe partnering also with an international organization. They seem quite keen. But in between, a professional development day with one therapist, cult expert who could come over from overseas, offering basically 1 day professional development for people in this field, and also for cult survivors. So it could be something like this in between. There could be DeCult film festivals or film nights, right? There could be an art exhibition. We've been contacted by people who've created wonderful artwork that they would like to share at the conference, and we just don't have the space for this. We'll have a premiere the night before of Witness Underground. It's a rockumentary from someone, a great filmmaker in the US, Scott Homan, who's left the Jehovah's Witnesses, and it's a great film, and he's bringing it to New Zealand. And the night before DeCult, we're premiering it in Christchurch at Lumiere Cinema. And so again, it just sort of sets the tone. That's not your normal conference, and we'd like to do more of these film nights with specific films, and there's some great ones out there. So maybe there could be a little a little DeCult Film Festival. Like there is I don't know which one is it, the Banff Mountain
Yeah, fan
Film
film.
Festival,
My friend
right?
loves that.
Exactly. So something like this. I'm not short of ideas. I'm just short of time and to fit it all in, but it will all happen.
So it sounds like you've kind of created the brand DeCult, and then there's going to be a lot of sub projects out of that. That must have been a real uphill battle, though. Like you must have faced a lot of challenges. Just even the paperwork alone with getting registered as a charity and coordination. Was that something much more
Yeah,
challenging than you anticipated?
absolutely. If I had known what it actually entails to start an organization and to organize a conference, I probably would have, I wouldn't say I wouldn't have done it. I probably would have waited another year and just rested on my book laurels a little bit and gone to more writers' festivals and maybe, write a few stories here and there. I basically stopped being a journalist. I've completely switched sides and I'm just staying, I mean, seriously, I'm day in and day out. I'm just organizing this whole thing. But then also it is a skill set of mine because I'm a good networker. I have lots of contacts. As a journalist, I know how to promote things or where the stories are, and a lot of our speakers have some incredible exclusive stories that I'm getting into the media. And also in my former life back in Germany, I was the producer, organizer of a weekly interview show, of a talk show, like a high profile interview show. And so that was my daily bread, was actually bringing people on the show and organizing their interviews. And if someone then jumps, someone breaks their leg 2 days before the show goes live, to find a suitable replacement. And it's not that different in some ways to get all these people to come, but it's like 20 TV shows all packed into one weekend, right? But I'm really lucky now. It's taken a while, but I've got a really great team of volunteers, which I didn't have in the beginning. I was completely on my own because the person I started this with, and she jumped ship, and then I maybe should have hit the pause button, but I just kept going as I do, hyper focused. And I've found some amazing people who are helping, who are volunteers, who are dedicated. We have trustees, we have a professional event organizer, and another one who's the speaker liaison. Yeah, I think we're a pretty cool team actually, and we can definitely do more than the one conference. Yeah.
Have you got any pushback from high-profile cult groups or, the people where I guess this would be their worst nightmare? Have you got any pushback from them if they found out about the conference?
Yeah, I don't know yet what's going to happen. I mean, the good thing is Gloriavel is not litigious against media or, people like me who are organizing something like this. They're just, they have bigger fish to fry. They're in the courts and they basically ignore what we're doing. So we don't have to worry about them, even though that would be the most obvious one, because what's at stake for them right now. Jehovah's Witness, they have not contacted me yet, but I'm aware that they would be aware and they are litigious. And I wouldn't be surprised if they totally have us on our radar, and they might, I don't know, I hope that that you have to buy, the fact they have to buy a ticket for a whole weekend, I hope it deters people to just show up as hecklers. Exclusive Brethren, the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, they are known for their surveillance of their former members. There has been reported and investigated, and we have a great speaker coming, Craig Hoyle, who's a reporter from Stuff, Sunday Star Times, and he's written the book Excommunicated. And because he grew up in the Brethren and left and was pushed through conversion therapy, and it's just awful what happened with him. But also, he has he's got a great book to present, and he will be doing an hour-long session about it. And I'm also aware that people who might come because they're former brethren, that they might be worried if someone could see them entering the building. It's more these kind of concerns for our participants, that we want to keep them safe. We don't want them to feel intimidated from anybody who might be around. Destiny Church definitely has us on their radar. We know that. We are at this stage, I mean, by the time this episode comes out, we will have announced a speaker. But not too long ago, I was still looking around and I asked in a semi-public group, and then if there was someone who would be the right expert or a former member, and we're still looking for the right speaker because there have been some changes and then people, onboarding and offboarding. And guess who popped up and said, you should take me as a speaker? Brian Tamaki himself. I kid you not. Seriously. That's kind of
What was
hilarious.
his angle?
Yeah, but I mean, there is a security risk with them. I mean, security as in we have to be aware that there could be protesting outside. We're in a public building. Turanga Christchurch Central City Library is really aware of the disruption that Destiny Church has already tried to cause in the past when they had drag events. So they've got our back. They're amazing. We've had a long safety briefing with them. They know exactly what to do. So we're actually not too worried. Of course, there's always the risk of defamation. So all our speakers are getting a legal briefing. We have a pro bono lawyer. Is that sorry?
Also just doxing and everything, you know, it's quite
All
scary for people who've just come out of these groups.
It's we're still bracing ourselves because we haven't announced all the speakers yet, and there's still some we're keeping for last because I think there might be some flying monkeys coming, and also just the diversity, I guess, of our program does push some people's buttons. You know, we have a disinformation panel in there, while we also have people who've come out of cults like Gloria Val, who probably believe in some things that I would label as disinformation, yeah, just to be diplomatic here. But so there's a broad spectrum from conservative Christians who might have very different views to some of our queer speakers and guests, and we're trying to get them all into the same room and hope that they can all learn from each other, and in the end they're all invested in a good thing, yeah, which is to stop coercive control and cultic harm. And it shows up in different forms, and not everyone agrees what is a cult and what isn't a cult. And even with Destiny Church, there are people who say, oh no, it's not, but it's okay. We don't need to slap that label on any group. It's more, hey, let's actually understand what they do, how they operate, and then people can, what are the dynamics, what are the markers, and then people can come up with their own conclusion. It's not about putting one group in a box and saying, but then with some groups it is really obvious and they need to be talked about. And I mean, look at the abuse in care Royal Commission of Inquiry and how the Jehovah's Witnesses have tried to wiggle their way out of that in the High Court, and they've failed, right? So they've really done themselves a disservice, and I think they really deserve to be named and shamed. And we have some great international activists and from New Zealand on a panel talking about them. So it's also really great to change the face or the perception of what people from cults look like. Because if you think of someone as being a Jehovah's Witness or former Jehovah's Witness, we just know these people who sit on the street corners in their suits and ties and hold the watchtower, but who actually is the person behind that, and who could that person be once they've left, and what do we really know how they're really feeling while they're sitting there? You know, are they really mentally still in, or are they maybe mentally out? So the whole event is also there to raise compassion and understanding. It's not just about informing about the evil cults and the awful things and the trauma. It's also, please understand why people end up there in the first place and what that means and the challenges they're facing, and that everyone is actually susceptible, right?
Yeah, it's true. And I know a lot of the groups we've talked about so far, you know, they have a basis or a nexus here in New Zealand, but we're also seeing a lot more high control groups emerging online. So, you know, there was a big exposure around Twin Flames, which high control group that was entirely operated, well, predominantly operated over Zoom. Do you think that the warning signs for what people should look out for are the same, regardless of whether it's that physical in person or online? Do you think it's quite like the same characteristics that high control groups have, regardless of where they're based?
You know, that's a question I have too. I'm really curious about this, and I actually can't answer it because I'm not the expert. But guess what? We have a panel on that. Because I'm really curious about that too. That's exactly what I'd like to know, right? Is there, I mean, anecdotally, or from some of the groups that I know just from the disinformation space, like Stasi's or so, and I mean, Falun Gong, some of the worst disinformation spreaders these days are also cultic groups. And how do they do that? Of course, they do that online. They don't just do that in their weekly sessions. So yes, I mean, cults and online, this is why we have a panel on that at DeCult about online radicalization and AI also. And but it's also interesting because just on that topic, even though, yeah, I don't have that much to share because I want to learn more about that too. And this is why I invited some very cool experts to talk about it. But the internet or Zoom groups or chat groups or whatever is also a great space for cult recovery and activism. The number of ex-JDUB, ex-Jehovah's Witness groups I'm in or I've seen online, or wowzer, I don't think that was possible 20 years ago, that people could actually network in that way when they get out. Some of the coolest cult activists that anti-cult activists that are on TikTok, like Apostate Barbie, yeah, big shout out to her, with her pink hair and her great fun advocacy as a former Jehovah's Witness. And she was going to come to DeCult. She's actually a Kiwi, now lives in the UK, but she just can't get off her job as a dog groomer because she's only just started. And I love people like her and what they do. And same with this rockumentary Witness Underground. So look, the internet, as we all know, is a violent, vast place, and also there are real opportunities also to bring some cult awareness forward. And there's some great initiatives on there. But hey, yeah, in terms of the details, ask Janja Lalic when she's here, because she has a lot of knowledge actually about twin flames, and she was on the documentary. In the documentary, that's our keynote speaker. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I've heard a podcast that she spoke on. I can't remember who interviewed her, but she's so insightful with all her knowledge. I would love to speak to her one day. She just sounds, so amazing. Are we seeing the influence of online-based high control groups in New Zealand yet? Like, I know it's, picking up around the world, but, New Zealand, as most things, tends to get to things a bit later. So has it affected New Zealand much, or?
Like I said, I don't really know enough about online cults as such, right? I'm aware of starseeds and twin flames, and I mean starseeds for sure. It's absolutely rife in New Zealand in the disinformation space and the alternative scene. They've had I don't know how many times they've had a stall or a tent or something at the NZ Spirit Festival. Hello. So, and as you know from the Wellington protest and from the pandemic, the fact that our borders were closed didn't mean that all this information couldn't still seep in here and radicalize people, or at least infiltrate their minds, or isolate them and pull them into these rabbit holes. So there's no limit to that. And in terms of actual, I mean, it's interesting because also in terms of actual physical communities, New Zealand has the highest number per capita of intentional communities, I think, in the world or in the Western world. I guess in the Western world, because yeah. And so that also tells you something, that there's a bit of a hunger here in this country. It always has been traditionally, I think, for new beginnings, for these fresh off the boat and utopian dreams, ideals. So there's a lot of that. The 1980s, when a lot of greenies from Europe landed here, and also after the Second World War, with refugees from war-torn countries, from Germany, Jewish refugees, and so on. It's always been a haven sort of for new beginnings and a safe place. And I think with that comes a lot of experimentation, which is great, which I personally love and embrace and think it's wonderful, and we shouldn't stop that. And also spiritual, freedom, religious freedom, all great, go for it. Find what fulfills you, but it can't be a cover for human rights abuses. I think that should be really clear, just to come back to that. Yeah.
And I really wanted to ask, so at the start of this, we were talking a little bit about, I guess you have that umbrella of DeCult now, and you have all of these amazing ideas for new projects after the conference, one of which is a DeCult documentary, which you just hit your first funding goal for us. Can you tell us more about the documentary and how listeners can support it?
Yeah, thanks. Look, we actually hit the funding goal in May because it wasn't. No, but that's great that you're reminding me of the documentary because it's all going to happen soon. Yeah, we did a boosted campaign. That's the Arts Foundation of New Zealand fundraising platform for 1 month. And we're going to film the whole conference as a mini documentary, probably 20 to 30 minutes. And we raised the money for it, which is really great. It was a big job, but we got enough. We got it over the line. So this is all happening around the conference before, after, and during, which is really great because it means that anyone, even people who haven't bought tickets or so, at least I mean, they won't be able, obviously, to see the full sessions. They can only watch those if they are ticket holders, online ticket holders. But the documentary will just really convey the flavor, the spirit, the kaupapa of what we're doing. And it will be a great way also to generate more interest for this topic. We can show it. We can show it at schools. We can put up events where we screen it. Where I mean, there's so many. I'm so excited about this, that we're actually having this event filmed by a really great crew. They followed me to Thailand last year to this event I did there on Koh Phangan. They were fascinated by what I was doing, and they just said, we'll just come along and follow you. And they shot they took a bit of footage for a few days, and I thought, well, they're really great people to work with, and they get what I'm doing, and so it's all worked out wonderfully. And that's going to be the DeCult doco, hopefully ready sometime later this year.
That will be great. And as you say, it's going to provide just another avenue to ignite that conversation about cults, not even just in New Zealand, but also internationally, especially when you have so many amazing international speakers coming. I'm really excited to see it.
And also, look, sorry to interrupt you, but also just crossed my mind, it would actually show people what a cult conference is, because you don't know how, I mean, the last year, every time I meet a friend or someone I haven't seen for a while, or anyone who's not up to speed with what I'm currently doing, and I say, oh, I'm organizing a cult conference, and kid you not, all the time they go, a what conference? And then
Are you trying to get people in a cult?
Get us into a cult.
Or is this where all the cult leaders meet? Are you going to get the head story about it? So, no, this is for cult survivors and their supporters and for therapists, and I can do my spiel. But you have to explain what a cult conference is. You don't have to explain a doctor's conference or a vet conference or a whatever outdoors conference or so. But a cult conference, so people go, a what conference? So this would be great. People get it. This is a cult conference, and they're amazing. I've been to two international ones, and I think they're just fantastic. The networking, the collegiality, most of the experts and academics there are former cult members and survivors, or some of them have been even abusers in their own cult. It's quite a common thing, unfortunately. People turn into terrible people and horrible people often in cults, and then to unpack all this later on and redeem themselves by doing all this amazing cult information. I have so much respect for those people. Some of the most incredible people I've met over the last, I would say, 5, 6, 7 years are actually people who've come out of cultic groups. They're not always the easiest ones, and there can be a lot of infighting also about who's doing it the right way in terms of their old cult and how you should, what kind of activist you should be. But overall, I think there is so much potential there for everybody to learn, because I can't say it often enough, we're all susceptible. It's not just sort of a curiosity about these other people and these groups and what's happened to them. We're all susceptible. And the number of people I know who are dabbling in something that is quite culty, or who have actually come out of something and they wouldn't share that with others because it's just a bit shameful that they grew up in some obscure evangelical setting that they're not, that no one would really understand how extreme it was, because people weren't wearing blue clothes and they weren't all living in a compound in the West Coast. So where do you even start if there's no name? If you literally come from a group that doesn't have a name, the sect without a name, the truth, the 2x2s, this is what they're called now. And there are 2,000 or 3,000 people in New Zealand in that group, and they're being investigated by the FBI. And one of their ministers, a Northman, has just been arrested because pedophilia is rampant in that group. So where do you even explain that this is your past, this is your family, this is your background, and you're out of there, when people don't have a context for what that means or what that group is? And we would have a speaker about the truth, the 2x2s, the cut without a name.
It's so important to give people the language and the vocabulary to talk about this, because if you don't, how can you even enter a police station and ask for help when you don't even have the words to describe what you've been exposed to.
Exactly, and not just, absolutely. Where do you even start if you don't have the language, right? And it's not just that you can't explain it, but also the person on the other end. If the police doesn't have the language, if they don't understand what that means, it's like with child sexual abuse, right? 20 years or so ago, where maybe 30 years ago, where the language was also still missing, or what are the signs, what to look out for, where does it occur, and what is grooming? Well, how do predators operate? And there was no knowledge about this decades ago, but now there is. And so that needs to change too, with cultic knowledge and cult education, understanding about this. And it's about creating the language and the concept, and also busting some of these myths and getting away from the sensationalism, but understanding this is a public health issue, but it's also something that is, from the sort of consumer side, is relevant for everybody who dabbles in spirituality, in self-help, who likes to go to a meditation retreat. That's me. Yeah, I like to do that. Who does yoga? That's me. Who goes to alternative festivals? That's me, right? Who has done some kind of business coaching, training course, whatnot. I've done that too. So I would say most people, most likely it's someone who's in a church group. Yeah, there's also, there are many church groups, and it's not about the religion. It's not about whether you're Christian or not. It's about the coercive control and the authoritarian leadership. There are many churches out there that I think absolutely qualify as high demand groups, and we need to talk about them.
That's the fine line, isn't it? It's making people understand we're not attacking their religion or their spirituality. It's about the coercive control.
Absolutely, right. And that's again, it's the beauty and the challenge of DeCult, that we're getting these people into one room, and people who are very anti-religious for very understandable reasons, and others who have a faith and who have a healthy expression of faith, and who are really invested in healthy groups, right? Or also facilitators, maybe from the more like the conscious scene, or so the wellness scene. I mean, we know it's a wild, unregulated market. I'm sure we talked about this back then with my work with FACT as well, with Fight Against Conspiracy Theories, and the disinformation and so on, and the manipulation that can go on those spaces. And also, there are a lot of wonderful people trying to do really good things. And where would they find the information? Yeah, how to not fall into the trap, how to not become the guru, and to watch out for the red flags, how to create better settings for them, for their group. So there's a lot to learn from all sides. I think it's really an untackled issue, and that we've mainly seen addressed now in documentaries, more media. It's changing. There's some good stuff coming out, but in terms of officials and agencies and the government and professionals, that really needs to happen, the cult education. Yeah.
So you were saying that there are some like DeCult conferences in other parts of the world. Have you attended any of them, or do you know what type of content they cover, what they do well, what they don't do well?
Right. Okay. So there's only one DeCult conference, and that's ours, because I've actually, branded the name, so to speak.
Yeah.
Not
It's
anywhere.
similar.
But there's ICSA, the International Celtic Studies Association, and they hold yearly conferences around the world. They're a bit different, not maybe as much. They're probably more like a typical academic conference, but they also have survivor workshops the day before for people who've come out of groups. So there's always a day just for the survivors, which I also think is really inspiring. So I've definitely picked up a lot from them. But I think our setting, the opening ceremony, the survivor story jam, the dinner we have in the evening, just all these extra things, the speaker's lunch we'll have. We have so many elements that the international conference don't have. And first of all, our speakers don't have to pay for their own tickets. That's a big difference. They're not getting paid, but we treat them really well. We host them, we cater for them, we look after them, right? So that's a difference. But I'm really interested to do more with ICSA, the International Celtic Studies Association, and I think they're interested in us too. So we'll see where that will go. One thing that I am probably more wary of, but then it's early days, is that we don't want to have cult apologists in the mix. There are academics out there, some international ones, who have been called that because of their very neutralizing or neutral stance on some pretty horrific cults like the Muni's Unification Church or the Children of God. And yeah, so I actually had a bit of a run-in with one of them at the ICSA conference in Barcelona, but that's okay. I understand that there is a role for the detached sort of sociologist who just looks at the phenomenon and maybe has some access that activists don't have. So I understand that there's a whole spectrum of activism, of academia, and everything in journalism and everything in between, and we're inviting it all to DeCult. So I want to, basically make sure that that's all possible and people can really go walk away and form their own opinions and also meet others who are maybe in the same boat, whether it's the therapists who are meeting colleagues who are also upskilling in this, or it's the cult survivors who don't feel so weird anymore because all of a sudden they're not the weirdos. They're actually the ones who share their story. And there will be a debriefing session. And on the last day, we'll have a debriefing session led by Julie Jenkinson, the psychotherapist, who's our main speaker on the Sunday, just for the cult survivors. So they have their own space where they can debrief at the end of the 2 days because it will be intense. We have 2 therapists on standby to give mental health support. We have a calm room also where people can go. So yeah, we're really doing a lot to make sure everyone feels safe and comfortable. And yeah,
it sounds very, very well planned out. And I can't believe, you said you have got a team of volunteers, but majority of it you've done on your own. And I can't believe you've thought about every single aspect of what you'll need, who you need on standby, your security, your wide range of speakers. And like you were saying before, you don't really have a template to go off because you're the first person that's organized a conference like this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the first one to organize a conference per se.
No,
I'm lucky that I have a professional organizer, but this idea, you're right, this is a new thing. And I mean, I wake up with this every morning and I go to bed with this every night. It's constantly on my mind. And I'm in hyperfocus and it does produce a lot of output, that's for sure, right? So watch this space. I think it's going to be amazing. And I'm also, like I said before, I'm also quite glad to have a little break afterwards and have a summer again. And then we'll hopefully sort of, have a great network of people who've attended the conference, who know what we're doing, who we can work with. I mean, like I said, I can only say again and again, I'm not the expert, right? I don't think I should be the head of a cult watch agency or something like this. I think there are other people who are more qualified, but I'm good at connecting them and I'm good at sort of bringing things, moving things along and say, look, let's do this next and let's have that meeting and let's have that professional day. And then maybe one day, I mean, it's started in other places too. Maybe one day we'll also have a cult recovery retreat center. Imagine how amazing that would be if there was a place like a halfway house kind of, if you come out of a cult. And I'm just thinking of one person who I've met here in Christchurch who has come out of this region, my meditation cult. And she was so lost afterwards as a young adult, as a grown-up woman, because she only went in there, I think, in her 20s or so. Yeah. Or she was 18 or so. And she really fell between the cracks with a health system. She checked herself into her Morton here at a psychiatric hospital in the end. She was suicidal. She tried to take her life because she just felt that there's no one really who can help her, who understands what's going on. And she told me, she said, on my sofa in my living room, we're both crying together. And she told me this, that if only there would have been a place, maybe for 2 weeks or so, where I could have just gone and could have just like a transitional space where someone would have just looked after me who understands and I could have just landed. And yeah, so that's another dream of mine. And there are more people on our team who have that dream too, that maybe one day there will be a house like this. It will be a little center like that where people can actually land and recover when they come out. And maybe then we can run courses there, or lots of things that can happen. There's a blueprint for something like this that existed in the States a long time ago. I'm trying to remember the name Wellspring, I think that's what it's called. And I'd love to find out more at some stage after the conference.
And a holiday, maybe.
On a holiday,
Holiday.
exactly.
So if people are wanting to get involved with the conference, so not so much as being a participant in the conference, but if they want to help with organising or volunteering or anything, is there anything people can do to help, or is there anything that you're still needing that one of our listeners might be able to help with?
Thank you for asking. Well, we have also been inundated with volunteer requests from people who want to volunteer at the conference, so we're full. If that changes, I'll let you know. But at this stage, we have an amazing volunteer crew. I would love people to spread the word, to buy an online ticket. They really are cheap as chips, the content that you're getting, and you can watch that in your own time if you don't want to follow the live stream. All the sessions are recorded. All the tickets, all the info is on decult.net. And also, yeah, it feels a bit weird saying this and asking for this, but we don't have any financial support really. We've got a little bit here and there. The New Zealand Association of Humanists and Rationalists, or is it the Rationalists and Humanists? I always get it wrong. They've given us a little bit of sort of seed funding. And that's about it, right? We're basically begging left and right for people to give us things for free for the conference. So we will break even. We're looking good. But to keep going, I've been working for a whole year unpaid full time, and all the others are volunteers as well, and that's not sustainable. So we are really hoping to find benefactors or someone who puts us in their will, or just says, look, $20 a month, you can go on our website, there is now a donation function. That would actually be really awesome to get some financial support, because we need it to organize events, and we have running costs, and yeah, you can imagine. Yeah.
I want to see all of those dream projects come to fruition. So that's decult.net is for all that information.
Yes, decult, as in, like decolonize, is like, get away with the cults, decult. Decult 2024, let's decult.
And if any of our listeners want to keep up to date with what you're doing and your writing and just all the amazing work you do in this space, where can they find you?
Well, they can find me on ankerichter.net. That's my name, A-N-K-E, and then Richter, like the Richter scale.net. I used to have a newsletter, but that's now become the DeCult newsletter. So on the DeCult website, if you sign up, there's a newsletter that I write, and it's more focused, obviously, on the event. But on my website, you could also find things. I mean, it's not like I'm writing much at the moment, but I am actually working on one piece for the spin-off that's hopefully going to run soon when I have the time to write about it. My thoughts on cults in the media. And my book, the reviews, my podcast, all the things that I've done since Cult Trip has come out, and before, it's all on my website, ankerichter.net. So yeah, thank you for letting me plug that.
Thank you so much.
We wish you all the best for the conference. I'm hoping to join it online, obviously.
Oh, yes,
we don't live in Christchurch,
but I'll be abroad, so I'm going to get the recordings.
Yep, you'll watch the recording after, but I can't wait to hear about how successful it is and see all the photos that come out of it. It sounds so amazing, like such a well-rounded, well-thought-out conference where I can just imagine the people that go to it are just going to gain so much from it. And I'm like really hoping you get a nice holiday and a nice de-stress after, a whole year of planning it. But it's been so awesome chatting to you today. And yeah, if any of our listeners, if there's any way you can help with any funding, you know where to go, or you can get in contact with us if you want Anke's contact details, if you can help out in any way. But yeah, we just wish you all the best, and it was so lovely chatting to you.
Thank you so much.